All good.
Okay, it's a pleasure to speak to you again. How are
Yeah,
you?
yeah, not bad, not bad.
No complaints, yeah?
Busy as always. Yeah, no complaints though.
Recovered from an intense bout of touring, yeah?
Yeah, it was a really good tour. I mean, that London day was the last day, so yeah, recovering since then. Been doing a bit of writing, stuff like that. Getting there.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Downtime now, yeah?
Yeah, a bit of downtime. Doing a bit of
Good.
trying to finish up the third album uh, over the summer, I guess.
Yeah, all right, cool, cool, cool. It's good to hear. But obviously, we're here to do something a little bit different to my standard interview. And I'm so pleased to be able to have the opportunity to do this with you, focusing on a specific subject, gaming and everything
Yeah,
around that. So, initially, I'm like, okay, how do I get this started to get this ball rolling? Because I really wanted
yeah,
this to be more than, hey, what's your favorite game and stuff like that. So, to get the ball rolling, and I have got a lot here for you, so we'll see what we actually
yeah.
get to. But to get the ball rolling, what's got your attention right now, basically? Is there a specific game that you're playing, a specific set of games that you're just really enjoying right now?
At the moment, I'm dipping back into Final Fantasy 14 before Dawn Trail comes out. Catching up on a couple bits there. Been playing Morrowind actually, which is pretty
Oh,
fun.
wow.
Um, um, bit of the way through Ghost Trick, which is pretty great. Finished Dragon's Dogma 2 just before tour, so that's already done with. Um, Tree DLC's coming out
Hmm.
the week before Dawn Trail. Probably, I don't know if I'll play it at launch though. Um, yeah, mainly at FF14 at the moment, I guess. I've not been playing a huge amount since I got back from tour, so sort of in a music mode. I very much shift into different modes, and like sometimes I'll just be playing nothing but video games for like a month, and not want to do any band work, and then just be doing writing and not feel like playing anything for like a while. So after the tour I got back, I did a lot of writing, and then I've sort of been easing back into playing games with Morrowind and FF14, I guess, in the last few weeks.
How you finding the time to put like the hours into those sorts of games? You know, there's a lot going
Oh,
on.
it's a very big hobby of mine. It's like all I spend. I'm very much focused in like I'll just do one thing for ages. As like with all my spare time, I'm just gonna do this until. So I'm really bad with like I've got loads of hobbies. Like I'm really into like Warhammer and stuff, and like music and going to shows and uh, watching anime and reading manga and reading comic books. But I'll like end up just really into one thing for ages. I think it's just an autistic hyperfixation for a time, and then that's what I'm doing until something else like takes my focus, and then that's the only thing I'm really into. And I'm sure Josh could attest to all the times I won't shut up for ages about like one game or like comic books or like something I've watched. Like I'll just be really into one thing. But it's cool because like Josh uses me as a filter to pick out good stuff. Like Josh got into Dark Souls and played all of the Souls games and like Bloodborne because of me, and been trying to get him to play Silent Hill. He got into Resident Evil because of me. He got into um uh what was the other Metal Gear Solid. I got him to play
Hmm.
all the Metal Gear Solid games. Uh, so I sort of I'm the encyclopedia of knowledge with games, and then he's like, "Oh, what should I play?" And like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of it. I don't know how much you've looked into it, but like our last album, Blossom, is very much like a concept album based off of Final Fantasy 14 Endwalker and like the Outer Wilds, um,
Hmm.
sort of merged together. Those, and then there's like bits of in the lyrics and stuff, and like the concept of the album. There's bits of like Dead Space in there, in Silent Hill. There's a little bit of Final Fantasy 7 in there. Um, Sort of all these concepts coming together. So there's a little bit of Bloodborne in there. Um, you know, I'm pretty. take things pretty seriously with games.
You must. Do you feel blessed in a way to have such an immense amount of hobbies? Like the fact that you do have so much things you can enjoy, and you can get so passionate about the gaming side of things as much as the comic books or the tabletop stuff and all of that. Like, do you think that that's a good thing?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. I'm just a pretty cheerful person. I'm always like, if someone likes something, there must be some merit to it.
Mm.
So I'm like, if someone suggests me a movie, like there's not like sorts of movies I wouldn't want to watch or sorts of games I wouldn't want to play, or like the book gets suggested, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll check that out. Like I've been watching The World at War with my partner recently, and like learning about like World War II, like a really seminal documentary from the 70s, and I'm like, it's fantastic. And like not too I mean it's pretty fucking intense watching it, but it's good to like know about these things and like pay respects. And yeah, I mean it's fun, but it's very frustrating at times because there's just not enough hours of the day.
That
Sorry if I'm like slurring a bit. I've got like an ulcer on my tongue, and it's making it hard to talk a little bit. But,
Okay, if you do get if you find yourself getting uncomfortable and you want to stop, just let me know. It's not a problem.
yeah.
You sound great, so don't worry on that side
Okay.
of things. Okay, but this is a broad question. So answer as you so choose. But for you, what makes a good game?
It's sort of the whole package, really. I would say that and because you get your wit, like you can have your like fantastic all-round packages where it's got like gameplay, graphics, story, the music's there. So like a game for that could be like GTA 4 was like a masterclass in like every respect. When it came out, it was pushing technology forward, but the gameplay is really fun. The story was really like surprisingly like in depth for like when it came out, and like tackling serious topics. And like and then obviously there are other games where like Outer Wilds is also a game which is like pretty much a flawless like piece of video gaming, like probably like one of the best games ever made in my opinion. But then you've also got games which are like a little bit more janky and like have things that don't quite live up in some respects. So like Near,
Okay, yeah.
Near is like it's not the strongest on the gameplay front, but like the world that Yoko Taro creates and the graphics, not the graphic, the art design, the story, the music, all of that sort of elevates it above where it would be otherwise. And then you've got a game like Kingdom Hearts 2 is like pretty all over the place as a story. I wouldn't call it the Citizen Kane of gaming, but the gameplay is fantastic. The atmosphere of it's great. The music's fantastic. Or even like Dragon's Dogma, which just came out, like it's a very specific type of game, like Dragon's Dogma 1 and 2, where if you're a fan of what those games are trying to do, they're fantastic. But the thing I think like the Helldivers dev said recently is like a game for everyone is a game for no one. And like, there'll be games that aren't for you in certain like trying to think of like a game I've played that I didn't get on with, but maybe something like Helldivers that I can feel the appeal. I just don't particularly get on. Like Left 4 Dead. Left 4 Dead is a fantastic game, but I have never really played it that much. Like I've enjoyed it in small spurts. I can see why someone would put hundreds of hours in, play with friends over and over, do all the like hardest difficulty stuff in it. And it's like, but that's not a game like that's not an experience that everyone will want to dedicate that amount of time to. And the same like with me, with like Final Fantasy 14, I can put 2,800 hours into it on my last check. but it's not for everyone. Like the story is definitely like. So I was chatting with Brady from Conjure, our driver, about this. Like different elements and stories, I think will appeal to different people. So, for example, he loves Interstellar, and I didn't like it as much. The film.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
I'm really into like the hard sci-fi stuff, and when it hit that like bit near the end, spoilers for Interstellar, a film that's like a decade old,
Yeah.
where it goes a bit more sci-fi and more like the power of love saves the day type of thing. I didn't vibe with that, but he loves that, and that like brought him to tears, and it's his favorite Nolan film. But at the same time, I can see why like Final Fantasy 14 deals with similar things of like uh the tone of that and the like, not to say lightheartedness, but the it's definitely got a vibe to it that I don't think everyone would be like it's for them. Like
Yeah.
in the same way that like Zelda might not be for everyone because someone might just not like fantasy settings, things like that. So yeah, I think there's a lot of games where like Morrowind, not everyone's going to get into Morrowind. Like the dice based system for the combat is like just not going to appeal to people. A lot of people just don't like turn based combat in games. That's not turn based, but as an example of a gameplay system
Yeah.
that not everyone would be into. But at the same time, I also hold that if you don't like turn based combat, you haven't played a good turn based game and given it enough time. Because I think a game like I think turn based combat can be way more engaging than anything real time. Looking at the Final Fantasy series, the combat system in every game from like 10 and before is a lot better than the games after then. In my opinion. I mean, I don't think there's anyone who'd like defend 15's gameplay and be like, oh yeah, it's the pinnacle of gameplay in the Final Fantasy series.
No, I get you. Particularly the turn-based thing, I'm of a certain age where it was all I knew. So the
Yeah,
initial shifts that certain, I think it might have been the Tales games, like Tales of
yeah.
Vesperia and that style, where I first experienced a more fluid. I don't know the word they might use as
I think
fluid.
well, because I was of the opinion I hadn't really played any games with turn-based systems, and I hadn't really played any of the Final Fantasies except 12 when I was young. Um, and then when I was like 20-ish, my partner got me to play FF7. I got up to like the Scorpion boss at the start, and I was like, I get it. Like Danny DeVito crying, being like, I get it. And then that opened up a whole new world of like JRPGs and like getting into like the tales of games and like trials and Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger, the list could go on. Just like
Yeah.
yeah, Xenoblade, I guess in a way. It's kind of turn based. That's like real time turn based. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I did not expect. I was not expecting It's Always Sunny reference to pop up in this chat and this interview. So that's even cooler as well. All right, you mentioned briefly going back a bit, being younger. So let's talk childhood, specifically your earliest memory of either picking up a controller or using a mouse if it was on a PC. What is it for gaming?
Oh, hmm. I'm trying to think. It must have been around a friend's house or something.
Hmm.
Because I really wanted a PS1 or PSX. It was before PS1 came out, so I'd have
Yeah.
been like 2 or 3 years old.
Wow.
And I think it would have been. Do you remember Brewster's, the old pub
Brewster's.
chain?
Oh,
Uh,
right. Yeah. Brewster's. Yeah.
yeah, they used
BREW.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a Brewster's in Bournemouth, in Boscombe, and they had a little kids area in there, and they had those old the setups with the controllers hooked up to like a PSX in a case with like a CRT built in. And they had like the Emperor's New Groove movie tie-in game for PSX. When did that come out?
That's God. That's got to be mid-90s at least. maybe 96.
It came out in 2000, so I
Oh
would
wow,
have
it's a
been,
lot later.
I'd have
Yeah.
been 4. I'd have been 4 when that was out, and that was fresh on there, and that was like, yeah, this is fucking sick. And I like sat there and like just stood there and like complete, like every time I went in there, I'd try and complete the whole game in one go. So there was no memory cards in the machines there, obviously. And then I think a PSX was too expensive, so my man managed to get a second-hand Mega Drive as my first console, and I had Sonic 1 on it, a port of Sonic 1 to the Mega Drive, a platformer with like a surfing guy. I can't remember the name of.
Cool Spot.
Sorry?
Cool Spot?
I'm not sure.
Just trying to think of surfers on a Mega Drive today. To be fair, it could be any game. There was a lot of them on that console.
There were Green Dog the Beached Surfer Dude. Yeah,
don't know that.
That was a banging game. It came out in '92 apparently. And there was a football one which I didn't care about because when I was 4 I didn't care about football. I mean I still don't really. But yeah, those were the 3 games I had, and then I think eventually I got a PSX with Gran Turismo 2, Descent. What was the there was like a car combat game that was really cool. It wasn't Carmageddon and it wasn't Twisted Metal.
Vigilante,
I remember looking
Vigilante 8?
It wasn't Vigilante. I remember looking it up recently.
That's about it for me when I think it's car combat games. Those 3 there.
Grudge Warriors.
Yeah. All right.
Very niche. I had that. And for a while, yeah, I just had a PS1 with a PSX with a couple bits. And then I think I got a PS2 maybe around. Like I've liked playing games. Like we'd get stuff from Blockbuster occasionally. But it was like when I got my PS2, which would have been, I think I was 6.
Okay.
So like 2002. I got a PS2 and my mum was like super poor at the time, literally saved up for over a year to buy it. It's like a surprise Christmas thing for it. It's like the best Christmas ever. And it had Star Wars Racer Revenge, PS2 tie-in game to Episode 1 pod racing game. And then from there on I just like rented loads of stuff from Blockbuster. So I played like Kingdom Hearts 1, Shadow of the Colossus, and many more. I played like hundreds of games on the PS2. I'm just struggling to remember. Oh, Spider-Man 2. I rented the Spider-Man 2 PS2 game from Blockbuster so many times the guy said I could have just bought it. Yeah, that was fun. And then obviously I went. I eventually got a GameCube as well and a PSP. And then that was it until I didn't get a 360 until, well, in there's a brief period like 2008 maybe-ish. I played some games on PC, but I had to pretend they weren't on the PC because my mum didn't want me having games on the PC because she said it slowed it down. So if she'd delete the icons off the desktop and then say it was faster. It's classic. But I remember playing Bioshock and Dead Space when they came out, so I would have been 11. If they're like 06, 07, I think they're around then.
Is it fair to say that you were instantly hooked? Like go back to, I mean, The
Yeah,
Emperor's New Groove and onwards, just instantly hooked with it.
Instantly hooked, yeah.
And for what you're describing, you weren't so much as dissuaded from playing video games at a young age. It was something that was encouraged, you know?
I wouldn't say it was encouraged. It was used as a reward, I guess. So I was homeschooled, so I'd be like, I'd earn like playing on video games for 2 or 3 hours if I did like maths homework and stuff like that. And then at the weekends I'd get to, my mum would say, oh, you can play up until this point and then we're going to town in the afternoon. So I'd get up at like 6 in the morning and play video games for like 6 or 7 hours to get in as much as I could before my mum woke up and like to go out.
Get it where you can. If you, as a child, growing up with going through all these eras as well, these specific consoles, I must say actually, before I ask you this, you going from basically PlayStation to a GameCube. How did that come about? What on earth tempted you to get a GameCube?
I've never been biased about consoles or anything. I've always been like, I'll play the games and whatever it is. So like I borrowed an Xbox off a friend once with a copy of like Def Jam V for Def Jam. Which one was it? New York? I can't remember. That was good. And Halo. So I beat Halo then. And like I wanted to play older. I think I found outside a house like a massive stack of thrown out official Nintendo magazines, but like 30 or 40 issues. But we were quite poor when I was growing up. So it was literally like I could get a new game maybe like once every like couple months. So I played the games I did have over and over, or we'd rent something when it was like the cheapest rental option, which was like £2 for a week from Blockbuster. And that's how I'd play most of my games. And then I slowly accrued games over time. But I think I managed to find a GameCube for like £35 somewhere and convinced my mum to let me get it. And I did. So then I played like Ocarina of Time and Metroid Prime and a bit of Wind Waker, Rogue Squadron. There was a cafe in town which had a GameCube, so we'd go there. My mum would go to this cafe, and I'd sit in there and play their GameCube. And like, I'd go into. I did a lot of playing games in like game stations where they'd have it set up. So I'd play Xbox games where I could there, and like at friends' houses, some friends had like a Dreamcast or a Xbox. So never really got into the whole console world thing. I think it's stupid and always has been, because what's the point?
Oh, it absolutely is. Again, showing
and now it seems like even game devs have given up at this point. They're just porting everything to PC eventually anyway. So, which is good. I basically haven't really done console gaming for like. I still do console gaming. I still have all my old consoles. I still have my PS2 here. I still have there's a Dreamcast right there. I've still my Switch as well. But I mainly play on PC. But if a game's on something else, I'll get that. Although there hasn't really been a reason for the current gen for PS5 and Series X, just because they don't have exclusives anymore. I guess PS5 has Demon's Souls remake and like Gran Turismo. But I don't think it has any other exclusives at this point, because it's all coming to PC. Last of Us 2 will come to PC because they ported Last of Us 1. FF16 will come to PC. Every FF's on PC. God of War 2 will be coming. God of War 1's there. Spider-Man will come. Yeah. There's no reason to buy a PS5. I'm not spending £600 when I could spend that upgrading my PC. I don't see a point. And then the Xbox, Microsoft have been doing dual like releases on PC at the same time. So,
do you ever find do you ever find yourself feeling retro and go, okay, I'm going to power up the Dreamcast and just play something in that? I still play. I still buy old games. I'll go to buy Kex and see what they've got in. Like I played through all the Silent Hill games probably like a year and a half ago. But I played those all on original hardware, PS2, PS1. Same with like GameCube games. I think like Crystal Chronicles, Final Fantasy, Power Stone on the Dreamcast. Play that sometimes. Like there's no. We've got an N64 here, but it doesn't work, which is annoying.
But Josh has an N64. Sometimes we play that around his, get some Mario Kart 64 in, or Smash 64. But yeah, yeah, there's no like I mainly play. I would say I play like old games, probably like 2/3 of the time, and then new releases like a third. I'm not particularly like, I don't get the hype. I mean, I just think that there's a lot of AAA games that come out now that aren't as good as a lot of games which are already out. So I'd rather just catch up on older games. Like, why am I going to play? I don't know, Horizon Zero Dawn 2 over going back and playing Final Fantasy 6 if I haven't played Final Fantasy 6. Like, one of these is an eponymous game that like defined a mark in RPG history. One of them is another AAA RPG that just came out that is like, yeah, it's good. I'm sure it's like a 7 or 8 out of 10, like perfectly enjoyable experience. But I don't understand. I've never gotten the thing of like people being like, oh, the graphics are too bad or the systems are dated, and it's like, well, it's like being into like films and saying I can only watch films that came out within the last 2 years, but I'm not going to go and watch Scarface or Alien or Terminator 2 or Titanic. Like, it seems silly to me that some people have that kind of outlook on stuff, because I'm like, I'd rather see, like, when I played Resident Evil 4 for the first time, it wasn't when it came out, but it was like 3 or 4 years ago, and I was like, I get it. I can see that's almost like the best. I've played games which have like copied that execution. So I played like Dead Space games. I played like Gears of War. I played over the shoulder shooters. But when I played Resident Evil 4, I was like, this game does the thing. I can see how all these things ripped off from it, or not ripped off, but were influenced by.
Yeah.
This does it better than so many games that came later. So it's I think it's very important to like try and preserve history, and that's like a big issue with like gaming, is there doesn't seem to be as much of an effort to preserve the history and the accessibility of getting in to play those older games, in the way that like I love Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, but there isn't a way to play those that isn't buying an old copy for PS2, which a lot of people wouldn't want to do, and then figure out how to like hook up a PS2 to like a modern monitor, or emulating, which is dubiously legal, but probably also a great solution for that. But like, it's sad. It's sad that people can't just pick up like Resident Nemesis and play it, and all they've got is like the remake, which is like the Resident Evil 3 remake, you know.
I'm gonna take it you don't like you don't care for the remakes.
They're good games. They're not good remakes. They don't replace the original. So like, I think 2 remakes a cool game in its own right. It's nowhere near as good as the original 2. It doesn't capture the vibe. Like, it's such a strong atmosphere in that original, and the new one has an atmosphere that's really strong, but it's not the same atmosphere. The original has that like that super like very 90s like action horror aliens / Terminator 1, like, oh, this is scary but exciting, but it's so 90s. And then the remake is also set in the 90s, but then they're just like, yeah, here's a USB drive and everything's really slick, and like, yeah, there's occasionally an like CRT screen, but you couldn't, if unless you were told it was in the 90s, you wouldn't be able to tell. And I think it's lost that thing that was such a strong part of the identity of it. And then the 3 remake just cut out so much of it. I thought the 3 remake was a better game than the 2 remake, just because it was I felt like 3 remake was like, here's a Hollywood roller coaster ride of the events of 3. But, and like, yeah, it messed with more of it and took out bigger chunks, but at the same time I was like, this is more capturing the spirit of the original. I still don't think it was a good remake. It was a fun game. It was overpriced for the amount of game you got, but the gameplay of it was pretty great. Although Nemesis was completely ruined in it and only shows up once for like 30 seconds. And then 4 remake also, it's like, it's a great game. I think 4 did the closest job of emulating the original, but at the same time, the tweaks it made, it didn't make it a better game. It's like, here's the same game again, also good. But the original one's still better.
Holds up.
Like, it still holds up. There's no reason to, like, it's like watching a good American remake of like a great Japanese film. It's like yeah, I'm not sure what like an example of that is. But like,
If you've seen the horror movie Wreck, Spanish horror movie called Wreck about zombies,
yeah,
REC.
well, I know of it, but yeah, I've heard there's an American remake where it's like,
Yeah, called
it's
Quarantine, cool. And it's shot for shot. It basically is the same film, just with English speakers. What's the point?
Yeah, yeah, I sort of feel like that. So it's like, I guess with 4 remake, there's like I enjoyed my playthrough of it. I won't return to it, but I probably will return to 4. Like right after I beat 4 remake, I went and played 4 original again on professional, and was like, God, this game is fucking amazing and so tightly designed. Whereas the new one's cool, but I don't think it has that same level of like intention behind all the like when you're making such a bold defining move in like third person shooters where everything's so intentional and it's something that's never been done before, to then remake that, it feels like it's losing the thing that makes that so special. The fact that it came out when it did, that so many games had never done this before, and the boldness of those choices. They're not bold choices anymore, they're safe choices, and you've seen it all before because it's a remake of the same thing. I think it loses its cultural context then. Anyway, I thought it was good. But I'm like, I would recommend people play Resident Evil 4 as well as the remake if they're going to play the remake. I wouldn't discourage someone from playing the remake, but yeah.
I want to stick here just a little bit actually, because I want to ask your opinion on that as we're talking about Resident Evil. And obviously just recently rumored that they were looking at remaking the first game yet again and potentially doing Code Veronica. Do you have any feelings on that?
I think of all the games that need it, Code Veronica could probably be the most in need of that kind of. It was. Code Veronica wasn't a masterpiece in the first place. It was decent. It was a bit more of the same. I don't see why they shouldn't keep making them. I'll probably keep playing them. I've heard it's Code Veronica and 0 they're doing remakes of.
0, first 2, right? Yeah.
One down the line is what I've heard. Before 9, but Veronica and 0 would be before both of those. I think that will be cool. I mean, I think they've got a good formula that works with these remakes. They're solid games. I'm not going to say any of the remakes have been bad games. I just think it's a shame that there isn't the preservation there to make certain games available on current systems, so you can still play 0 and the old 1 remake quite easily. They're ported to everything. Same with Resi 4. But then 2 and 3 and Code Veronica. Actually, I think Code Veronica's got PS4 port based on a PS3 port from the PS2 version of the Dreamcast original.
Oh, that's exhausting.
Yeah. But yeah, I do think there should be an effort to preserve, like, I don't know, like release an emulated version of 2 and 3 and be like, here you go, it's £5 a game or something. Like, just build an emulator in a box and release it. Like, I think the Tomb Raider remakes recently did a really good job of being very faithful to those original games whilst making them available. And yeah, they had the graphical improvements and stuff, but you could turn all that off and still get a experience that was quite similar, just at a higher resolution. And with like some slightly different shader compiling, so it looked marginally different, but not like miles away from where it was originally. And I think that's quite important to preserve the way things were. And I think that's that's a big issue with facing like I mean, don't get started on the Silent Hill 2 remake. We'll be here all day. But there's a big issue facing games like that. Like Silent Hill, the whole Silent Hill series is like completely inaccessible for a lot of people. Like, obviously, it's easy to buy, like because the physical copies are so expensive now as well. Like, I think when I bought Silent Hill 3, it was like £40, and now it's gone up even more to like 80.
Don't recommend the HD collection.
But that's the thing, they lost the source code, which is like a really weird position to be in. Like at that point, what do you do? So they've not got the source code for 2, but at the same time, the PC version of 2 is abandonware online. Like it's legally available on like archive.org, and I will say for people out there, you can play Silent Hill 2. The PC, there's a fan-made enhanced edition which aims to make it match the PS2 original, and you can use the abandonware, perfectly legal version of Silent Hill 2's PC port, and it's a mod for that to turn it back into like that, which is a fantastic thing to have available. Yet it still requires someone to know, like, oh yeah, this is available on the internet, and then I get this mod. It's very easy to install. It's just like a couple button clicks. You just direct it to where you've downloaded the game, and then you can play Silent Hill 2 like you're playing it on a PS2 with like a very one-to-one emulation of the original.
You're still having to hoop jump.
But yeah, you're still having to jump hoops, and like it's a weird position for Konami to be in. With like, do they want to like? Can they like reverse engineer the source code off that? Like how? I don't see how a group of modders can go and deliver like an almost like one-to-one faithful recreation of the original game, but Konami themselves, with all this money behind them, with Silent Hill 2 being like such a huge brand for them, not able to do that, not willing to put in the time to look back at like that and try and decode the source code from under it and find out what's going on there, and like just package that up and release that again for people to be able to have easy access. And then like, I'm not a developer, I can't say how easy it is to do that, but whenever I see fans do something to that degree of thing, and then when the company doesn't care about that, and they'll do something like release those HD remasters in inverted commas.
So I asked that, and I'm laughing because I need to tell you this. So similar vein to certain others you did. There were many games I just didn't get to later in life. Classics that exist that you just never get around to playing for whatever reason. And one major franchise I never really got to was Silent Hill. I played the first one back when it first came out on PlayStation 1 back in the day, but that's where it ended. And I never played 2, 3. I didn't even know 4, The Room existed, and so on, until maybe 7 or 8 years ago, basically when the HD collection came out.
Yeah.
And I saw that and went, perfect, there's my opportunity to play them. And I played 2, and I thought, well, that's not all it's cracked up to be, but hey, you know, that whatever, and so on. Only after that fact did I find out like all the discourse around it and where else you could actually play it and where you could find it and so on. So for the longest time, that was my only impression of what that game was. Both of those games were supposed to be. Now, and I wonder how many others have also had to go through that, because if you told me back then I would have to jump through those hoops to play the most authentic version of it possible, I either wouldn't have known what to do or probably wouldn't have been like, I can't be bothered.
Yeah. It's I think that's the issue there with like preserving video gaming history, like having companies which aren't open to the idea of sharing their back catalog. Like Nintendo doesn't want anyone sharing like the source code of their older games, and like because they want to sell Mario 64 ported to the Switch, but they're not going to let anyone emulate that, and are very stringent on that stuff. Yet there's so many games stuck in that hell of like, well, you can illegally download a copy of the ROM for this game and emulate it perfectly, but Nintendo don't want you to do that. But Nintendo also won't offer you any other way to play it legally, so you just can't play it. And the same with the Silent Hill games. Konami don't want you to. I mean, with the Silent Hill 2 Enhanced Edition, luckily that is abandonware on PC. You can do it, but for Silent Hill 3 and 4, those are trapped on the PS2. That's it. There is a PC port of 3 that's also abandonware, but it's not quite up to the scratch of the 2 fan mod to like get back to where it was. But because of that, you have these things where they'll release a subpar remake, so they lost the source code for 2, built the entire game up from scratch again, re-recorded all the voice lines with different actors, or some were the same, but had to re-record it all because all the files were lost. They did the same in 3, where they re-recorded a lot of the audio. They changed the font on loads of things to Comic Sans.
Yes.
The artists, the original artists involved with the games weren't involved with the remakes. So the remake team didn't understand what was intentional and what wasn't with like the grimy atmosphere of stuff. So they cleaned all the dirt off of everything, and they got rid of the fog when Silent Hill, like the fog is an essential part of the atmosphere. It's just, it's quite it's an interesting thing that happened, and I think that is a sad thing that stuff can't be preserved in that way. And I make such a point to go out of my way to experience games as they were originally intended. Like when I played Silent Hill, even though the fan, like, it's maybe going above and beyond, but even though that fan, the enhanced edition has abilities to go up to higher resolutions and frame rates and stuff, I played it at 480p locked 30 FPS in 4:3 because that's the way the developers intended these textures to be seen at these resolutions. And just like that's like the image that they finalized, they were happy with, they signed off on to present to people. So I like being, it's like watching a colored version of a black and white film, I guess, in some ways. Like, you want what the director signed off on, not what some people like 10 years later who weren't involved in making the thing thought would be cool.
Yeah, I'd use Night of the Living Dead as an example there. You could watch your 90s colorized version or so on, but if you want the authentic and, you know, real, just go back and watch the original. Okay, let's jump to another one then. And this is really... no, go on.
Oh, just about Night of the Living Dead, I think Mark Commode said it was like a load of toddlers had gotten crayons and drawn over your screen while you're watching it.
That's good. Right, we talked a lot about things that you really like, what you enjoy. You've said yourself you basically go out your way to like most things. But so I want to kind of get an idea of a style of game that perhaps doesn't always gel with you. Everybody's got a type of game that they just don't really like. They might have tried a few times, be it first-person shooter, RPGs, beat 'em ups, whatever. Is there one specific that you're just like, you know what, it just doesn't work for me?
I'm just going to scroll through Steam and see.
Oh, yes, there we go.
What's on there? I will say, like, I'm not super into multiplayer games. Like, I like some, but I've never really like gotten into like stuff like Team Fortress or like, I mean, I really enjoyed like Battlefield 3 and 1942 back in the day, and
yeah,
I'm a little bit of a sucker for like a little bit of Call of Duty sometimes. But yeah, I don't I guess simulation like racing games and stuff, I don't think I have. I guess sporting games, I suppose, would be my area where like I'm not really interested in playing a game like FIFA. Rocket League is fun for like an hour. I've got 2.9 hours played on Rocket League, and that was enough for me to be like, I get it, it's cool, it's not for me. Yeah, I'd say, and then I guess there's a lot of for want of a better word, slop that comes out these days with like random open world survival crafting games that I'm just
Oh,
like,
right, yeah.
there's so many of these, and I'm like, if I want to play a game like that, I'll just play Minecraft. I didn't get Terraria; it wasn't for me. I've not played a huge amount of like 2D indie platformers, stuff like that. So stuff like what's it called? I've got it bought. Rogue Legacy. I'm not super into roguelite.
Okay.
So FTL, didn't get it. That's a game where I wanted to like it, and I've got a lot of friends who really love FTL. They just didn't gel with me. Although saying that, I loved Hades, so
Right.
I'm not completely writing it off as a genre, but
So I think it's
it
fair
also
to sort of
wasn't.
say that it's not necessarily a specific type of game that you dislike. It's simply you'll try something, and if it doesn't gel with
Yeah,
you, that's that.
I would just say overall, I guess sporting games would be things like an F1 game, or I like race, like arcade races. So like
Oh,
Burnout and Forza Horizon is more
okay.
up my street than like a F1 2023, or I guess FIFA or stuff like that. I do like Gran Turismo though, which I guess more sim, but I guess that's like halfway between arcade and sim racing.
Yeah. I think you might have already answered this, but I'm going to ask it just to be 100% sure because you, right at the very start of us talking, you brought this up. Everyone has that one game that they've sunk a stupid number of hours into.
Yeah,
Is it 14?
I think more than any other games, probably FF14, but I guess up there with that. I did play a lot of GTA 4 over the years. I've completed that game a lot of times. I've played a lot of Call of Duty Black Ops 1 Zombies back in the day on 360. Probably nowhere near the levels I've played FF14, but yeah. And then like there's obviously loads of games which are just very long games that I've completed. Like if I look at my play times on Steam, like the longest games I've played through Cyberpunk 2 times, and that's put it as my number one most played game on Steam at like
Oh,
300 hours. But I still want to play it again. Cyberpunk I really loved. Baldur's Gate 3 was also a very long game, but I loved it. Dragon's Dogma, decently long. Um, and then
Elden
games
Ring,
like New Vegas.
Skyrim, things like that as well, you reckon?
Yeah, Elden Ring, I like did everything in it, and like all the side stuff. So that was like but these aren't like things on like multiple playthroughs, like
Yeah.
up to the thousands of hours. These are like one playthrough, like 100 to 200 hour games. Like Yakuza 0 is like 100 hour game if you do side stuff. Dragon's Dogma 2, I spent 120 hours in my first playthrough. Elden Ring 130. New Vegas got like 150 in there.
Would
I
would
spent
you call it?
100 hours on. Sorry.
Go on, you're gonna say 100 hours on.
On FF15 somehow. I was like, it was still all right. It was FF15 was the most like. So the thing everyone said for 13 when it came out was like that was the quintessential it gets good 20 hours in game, where people were like, just wait, and then
Gets
FF15
good.
did the exact opposite. Gets bad like 25 hours in.
I remember hearing that about Final Fantasy 13, and I was 15 hours in and just beginning to think, I don't know if I can make another 5 hours to when it gets good. And the problem for me was it never felt like it got so good that it meant those hours were worth it.
Well, worth it. Yeah. I mean, I
Would
guess
you?
FF14's like now becomes new, like, oh yeah, it
Yeah.
gets good 150 hours in. Gets
Oh,
really good, but I personally didn't mind my first. I'd not played an MMO huge like more than like a couple like days like on and off. Like I've never like sunk my teeth into an MMO before, and 14 was the first time I was like, I want to give an MMO a go. I'm gonna just play through it, and I just kept going. I was having fun, and I kept going, and then I was like, oh, played like 200 hours of this. Let's just keep going. I'm still enjoying it. Played through all the stories, all the expansions, and then still playing it now, being like, yeah, this is great. So,
do you think you're a bit of a completionist?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
I love going for like all the achievements and stupid things in a game for sure. Like see all the endings and do all the side quests. Type of person for sure.
All
Get
right.
all the collectibles, which is a terrible idea in some games. Ruined Elden Ring for me. Doing all the little stupid dungeons ruined Elden Ring. I was so over leveled. No boss past like what's the lady with the moon in the Leona of the Lakes? Renala. No boss past Renala killed me. I was like, oh cool. Or like more than once. Like by the time I got to Melania, killed her on the second go because I was so over leveled. And I wasn't grinding. I was just doing all the side content and trying to do all the side quests, and that just made me such a high level that the game wasn't fun because it was too easy.
Wow.
That's why I think I preferred Sekiro a lot, because Sekiro you couldn't over level. But again, like Bloodborne, it's a lot harder to get. That doesn't happen in the natural flow, and I think Elden Ring was designed for you not to do all the side content. But if you don't do all the side content, you'll miss quests. So it was a really weird catch-22 of like, well, either I'm over leveled and the game isn't fun because it's too easy, or I'm the right level, but I have to like knowingly avoid doing things which I know.
Force yourself to play in a way that you don't necessarily want to. It's odd.
Yeah.
Moving on to a little section of game that I'm quite intrigued to kind of get your thoughts on. I want to talk soundtracks. What I sometimes feel is the most underappreciated aspect of gaming. We'll start with this basically. Give me an example of a video game soundtrack that you adore. Like I mean you adore, like you love it. Like you would listen to it without needing to actually play the game.
I mean, I could go straight in on like Final Fantasy 14, or for that matter, every Final Fantasy. That's an easy one though. The Outer Wilds is a game. It's not the Outer Wilds, it's just the Outer Wilds. Outer Wilds is a game that what is like the perfect package. The soundtrack is phenomenal. I mean, I've got the FF14 soundtrack on vinyl. I think I've got Hotline Miami's 2 soundtrack on vinyl. I've got Near Replicant soundtrack on vinyl. I think those are all the games I've got on vinyl. But yeah, any of those, Kingdom Hearts, Cyberpunk had a fantastic soundtrack. Dragon's Dogma 1 had a fantastic soundtrack, I think. 2 was good as well. Baldur's Gate, fantastic. 3 had a fantastic soundtrack. 1 had like fine music, but 3 was great. Yeah, I guess that for listening outside of the games, those are like the main ones. I'm trying to think of like look through of like what stuff I'd listen to outside of the games, like Mass Effect. I mean, there's a lot of them in our like gig playlist. I don't know. You probably heard some at when we were staying in London. Like we put a lot of I put a lot of stupid game songs on the soundtrack. We had like Revengeance music in there. We had I'm just gonna open up the gig playlist. We've got like every save room theme. Oh yeah, like Resident Evil and Silent Hill, fantastic soundtracks. We've got like music from them in there. We've got Cyberpunk, Oblivion, Skyrim, Elden Ring, Metal Gear Solid, Hades, Kingdom Hearts, FF7, Nier, Dark Souls 1, FF15, some anime intros, some Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, MGS, Yakuza, Persona, fantastic music in Persona games and SMT, Halo. Yeah,
Why do you think video game soundtrack scores don't get necessarily the same level of appreciation as film scores? Because what you're just listening there alone is simply some of the most phenomenal soundtracks ever.
I think I don't even know if it's a question of specifically video game scores not getting appreciated compared to film scores. I would say video games as an art as a whole compared to films, I would say it's only proportional to the amount that people don't value video games as an art form compared to movies. And it's like, but there's such phenomenal work in there, and just as good, like Hans Zimmer composes songs for video games as well as films, but one of those is the thing that like everyone talks about. One of them isn't. Like he did the theme for Crisis 2 and Modern Warfare 2. He's done a couple of other bits here and there. I think he worked on Assassin's Creed Revelations.
Okay.
Yeah. And like there's so much stuff in video games that got me into, like I think the first heavy music I heard was in Call of Duty Black Ops when they had the songs in Zombies that were like pretty straight up metal songs.
Yeah.
As well as having Avenged Sevenfold songs in there, which got me into those. Like Health was a band I got into when I was like 13 or 14 because they were in Max Payne 3. They did the soundtrack for that. That's a phenomenal soundtrack. And now I'm like friends with that band, which is pretty crazy. I've been listening to them since I was 14. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of fantastic work out there. I think it's underappreciated just because gaming as a whole is very underappreciated. Like someone like Yoko Shimomura or Nobuo Uematsu should definitely be like hailed in the same as like John Williams or like composers. Like they are generational like inspirations and like such a huge part of so many people's lives, but they don't get that same appreciation, which is sad.
Have you ever done or thought about doing what does crop up more and more now, which is live orchestras doing video game music, video game to screens and stuff like that? Have you done that?
Yeah, I've been to those.
Yeah, any specific one?
I went to the FF14 concert like mid last year, I think. Yeah, that was at the Royal Albert Hall. That was really good. I went to another one, which wasn't very good. I went to see video games live, or it's so stupid.
I've done it.
Tommy Tallarico thing, like, but I was like 17 or something. I think that was also at the Royal Albert Hall. That was pretty dog shit. But the other one was good. The FF14 one was really good. I've got friends who went to the Akira Yamaoka Silent Hill one a couple of years ago. That sounds like it was amazing. I didn't know it was happening, completely missed it. I know they're doing Baldur's Gate 3 one and there's another one I can't remember. I know they're doing a Last of Us one and a Baldur's Gate 3 and then another game, but I think those are all like sold out that are coming out. I mean, there might be some tickets for some of them. Last of Us had great music as well.
Yeah.
I do like going to them. They're just quite expensive and I don't have the money to get tickets to go to like gigs because they're always like 80 to £100 for those kinds of things because they're like big ticketed events and I don't really go to those. I'm more pay 10 quid to go and watch a punk band in the Black Heart type because I haven't got the money to spend 100 quid.
Yeah, I think there was an Elden Ring. Either it was coming up or it's already just passed, but it was an Elden Ring.
I think Elden Ring was the other one of those that I was thinking of, maybe.
Yeah, Royal Albert Hall. I thought about doing it. Tickets were crazy price. So yeah, I'm kind of the same.
I don't feel like Elden Ring's got enough tunes to like last a full. Like right? I like that music, but would I watch like an hour and a half or 2 hours of just like boss themes from Elden Ring? Like, I don't feel like it's got the dynamic range of like, say, a Baldur's Gate 3 or
Mm.
say a Final Fantasy soundtrack where there are different songs for different things. Because in Elden Ring, there isn't really music. I mean, there's kind of a little bit of field music in Elden Ring where there wasn't in the previous games, but it's all very like big grand boss fight time, and then big grand boss fight time again, and then there'll be like one or two themes that are like all quiet and introspective and stuff. But yeah, I don't think it would. If it was a series one, if it was Bloodborne, Souls, Elden Ring, all like as a thing, I think you could put together a lot more of a enjoyable set list out
Yeah,
there.
that's a great
That would be
idea.
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, what's the best told video game story?
Oh, like the most tightly.
Just no. It can be. I guess.
I
In your
I'd
opinion,
probably go
something that you.
Outer Worlds on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Outer Worlds. I can't stop. Like that was a game that was like mind blowing for me when I played it, and for one of those games you can't play for the first time again. Like you get games where you can like play it again pretty easy. That's a game where the experience of the game is the game, like uncovering these things. It's the one game I would say like it's best to know nothing about before playing, or like as little as you can, because everything you discover and everything you find, it's like such a tightly designed game, because it was like 10 years of development from such a small team where they kept prototyping things and like iterating and iterating and iterating on the same, like the betas of it from like 6 years before it launched were basically the same game, just with less content in it. And it's still only like a 14-hour game. It's not like ginormous, but it's just like you got a little spaceship, you've got 5 or 6 planets in a little solar system, and you just explore the planets, but they're all incredibly well designed and handcrafted. Like every part of them is like intentional, and it's just discovering what the story is, what's going on. And it has an ending that moves me to tears, and then the expansion for it just expanded on that and is also like phenomenal. And I wrote an album about it, or like partly about it. So that and Final Fantasy 14 Endwalker was like a story that moved me a lot. But if you said the best told story, and I'm like, I don't know if I could say that when it builds on so much. It's a very situational thing. I don't think it would appeal to everyone in that it's like the conclusion to like 8 years of a game, and like the expansions and the raids and all of these things that tie together in the story. But I also wrote, the album was about that as well, but heavily influenced. But yeah, I don't know if that's delivered in the like most gamey way. I think Outer Worlds is a story that it's a story that couldn't be told in a different medium. Whereas Final Fantasy 14 is a great story, but I think it could be adapted into other works a lot easier than something like Outer Worlds could be. So like Grand Theft Auto 4, a fantastic story, could be delivered as like a film. Like the gameplay part of that doesn't hurt. Even something like a Final Fantasy 7, like fantastic story. Also, it's your actions aren't affecting those events in such a way that it affects how the story is told to you. Like anything with like cutscenes in that way, whereas like Outer Worlds is a game without cutscenes, and it delivers its story in a way that only a video game could. And I think that's what makes it so special. I would say Silent Hill 2 also delivers its story in a way where sort of being in that situation informs it. So I think that's another really great one. Cyberpunk is also up there, I would say, in it has very light role playing elements, I would say, but I think the choices in it have a lot more impact than people thought at release, because they're so well disguised that if you make a choice, it has an influence later. And that was a bit of feedback they got later, which is there are more branching paths and like changes in the dialogue than there are in like The Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk 2077, but people don't notice it because it's more seamless. It doesn't come with a pop-up going, this character will remember that you said that. So I think that's another fantastic one. But yeah, I think a lot of games do fall into the thing of like they basically tell a movie story, that like Metal Gear Solid, like fantastic. It is basically a movie with bits of gameplay in between.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'll stick on Outer Worlds. Bloodborne, also a game where you're experiencing the world. But yeah, Outer Worlds, I think. Or Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3, that completely skipped my mind. Another game where, I don't know, I could be here. I really like video games.
I love hearing about people's emotional connections to stories in video games, music, and all aspects of that. The emotional connection, something I just love hearing about more than anything else, because it's often what I get from it. So the Outer Worlds, and you having such an emotional connection to that, like
Outer Wilds,
I haven't played it. I haven't played it. Outer Wilds. Outer Wilds. Yeah, I haven't played it. Yeah,
Worlds is the Outer Worlds. Came out around the same part, and there's a lot of people mix them up because that's the one that's like an RPG. They're both sci-fi games, but that one's like an RPG game made by Obsidian. Outer Wilds is a small space exploration game made by Mobius.
About 5-6 months ago, I was late here at home and I was planning to start a new game, and I just want to know if I did start it and then stop.
Yeah.
You kind of start off at night in a campfire area.
Yeah, that's Outer Wilds.
Right, I started that, and then I went, you know what, I'm tired. I'm not ready to put my mind into this. So I kind of stopped, and I never went back to it. Right, clearly I must.
You must. It's so good.
Hopefully, when we next see each other further down the line, I will be able to say to you,
we can have a chat about
right.
Yeah.
What about the side of video games that's become more and more prevalent these days? And that is adaptions, be it TV or movie. They're everywhere, and there's more and more coming. Has there been anything in the last couple of years that has impressed you?
No.
Flat out, no.
I can. By the way, I've got another call at 8:30, but we've still got a little bit. Yeah, about the adaptation, I think that it's a bit of a fool's errand. I don't know. So for a lot of the history of doing adaptations, they struggled from the studios don't take doing it seriously because they don't consider the original an art form, so they don't think they should care about it. At the same time, they don't know who they're marketing it to. So for a large majority of adaptations, they were like marketed for the fans with fan service, but made by someone who didn't care about the original source material and thought it was stupid, so then tried to do things to make it cooler to appeal to a more mainstream audience, but they were already targeting either the fans of the game, and then it ends up being made for no one and a massive flop and terrible. And that's what I would say a large majority of adaptations was. Recently, we've been moving more into, I've not seen Fallout yet. I've not actually seen The Last of Us, but I've seen enough of like clips from it and stuff to get the read on it that it's basically 1-to-1, which is fantastic, and it allows more people to get that story. But as someone who's played the game, I don't see what I'd get out of it besides having a few extra scenes from the game. And I've heard those extra scenes are great in The Last of Us, but I mean, I like The Last of Us decently, and I was like, I wasn't mad over it. I was like, that was a very well told. I mean, I cried at the end. I was like, yeah, it's great, well told story. It didn't do anything that I hadn't seen before in that sort of story, and I think one of the reasons it was so groundbreaking at the time is the way they captured the actors' emotions and performances in it was something that hadn't really been done before. But the story itself wasn't really doing anything that hadn't been, that wasn't like very heavily relying on stuff like 28 Days Later and like a lot of other stories like that. So yeah, it was very well told. It was great. If it was a film, I'd be like, yeah, it was a good film. As a game, I was like, yeah, it was a decent game. The gameplay was not all that, in my opinion. I didn't like Last of Us. And then to make a show of it and just turn it into the story, I'm sure it is a good show. But I don't really, I'm not that interested to see it. I'm like, well, I've played the game. I know how the story goes. And I know that there are definitely at least a couple scenes in it where they literally just say the dialogue from the game again. And that makes up a decent chunk of it. And I'm like, well, I've played the game. Yeah, I don't get it. In the Fallout show, I know it's got a lot of inconsistencies with like they're not really paying respect to. It's Bethesda's version of Fallout that they're making a show of. It's not what Interscope intended. Was it Interscope? No, it's Interplay. What Interplay intended with Fallout 1 and 2. And then those same devs that became Black Isle and then Obsidian and New Vegas. Like they're referencing things from those, but it's very clear that like whoever was making the Fallout show at the same time was like referencing it for fan service more than like,
oh yeah,
we actually care about this atmosphere and these events and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's a decent show. I think just the sheer fact that they're taking it more seriously, I think will result in it. They're not treating the source material as like a joke.
Yeah.
So that's the main thing I think I get from the vibe of like that Last of Us adaptation and then the Fallout one is they're not looking down on the source material in the way that, say, all the Paul W.S. Anderson Resident Evils or Monster Hunter movies where they were just like, I don't know. The first Resident Evil movie was a decently fun movie. The Tomb Raider movie was a decently fun movie, but they're fun movies like on their own, but they're not paying any respect to the game. They didn't give a shit about the games, and they were looking down on those as source material. So, yeah, I don't know. I think I don't really see the point in adapting. I don't think it's going to stop them doing it. But
no. If you look at this sort of
it's not for
TBA
me.
and TBC list online, it's a scary, scary number of things that are supposedly in the works, and some of it I'd prefer to not see adapted. Oh, that's it then. What game or franchise do you want them to leave alone? Don't ever do it. Yeah.
I'm not sure. I just remembered that they did a Twisted Metal adaptation. That's so stupid, and they don't drive cars in it, really.
That's right. Yeah, well, yeah. I've seen Twisted Metal.
I've not seen it, but I saw like that clip of it that they showed, and they were like, "We're going to make a show. Here's a clip of it," and I was like, "This is dog shit." Where it's just like Sweet Tooth chat with Anthony Mackie.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not particularly bothered if they make an adaptation of something. It's not going to bother me. I don't have a problem that they did the Last of Us adaptation. I think if it's an adaptation of something that wouldn't work as a film, so like a game like Outer Wilds, it wouldn't work. So I don't see why they do it. But the Cyberpunk anime was a good adaptation, but that wasn't really an adaptation of the game. It pulled elements from it, but it's based off such a large world because that itself is a game adaptation of a tabletop RPG. So I don't know if I count that. I thought it was fantastic, but at the same time, it's because it's not trying to adapt the game. It was, here's an anime made by Trigger, who are fantastic in the world of this tabletop RPG, but they used the game as reference for like visual and audio design elements, which I think worked really well.
It's got a connection. You got to, in fact, if you found something you really enjoyed from that, we'll take that. That did trigger a thought in my head, though, and I wanted to ask you, have you, because one of my favorite kind of adaptations that I think I've really enjoyed was Castlevania, in particularly the animated show, the one that was or is still on Netflix or whatever like that. Did you see that? Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I haven't seen that one yet.
Okay.
I have heard it's good. Castlevania is one of those games where I haven't actually played any of the Castlevania games. I need to get around to it. That's one where it's also weirdly inaccessible to get to any of them. Like, I want to play Symphony of the Night. I don't want to emulate it. I don't want to spend £250 on buying a copy of it. So I'm going to have to emulate it.
Well, we of course would never say words like emulation or things like that. I will say, if they're making it impossible, you are required to get these whichever way you see fit. But we are not.
If I wanted to play it, I would have to do it that way.
That's it. Kate, you've given me so much of your time. So I'm going to ask you just one more question. So thank you for that. And this is basically a little bit of old school trading, really. You kind of started this and talked about how you like to recommend games. So I want you to give me 3 recommendations to myself and anyone watching and listening. And I'm going to give you 3 games that I would recommend you play. You may have already played them, so it doesn't matter if that's the case. But I'd be interested to see what we've got here with the back and forth. It can be as niche or as popular as you so choose. So 3 that you think I or anyone else should play, but you can't use the Outer Wilds now because that's now removed and put to the side. It's got to be 3 different ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll throw 3 at you.
Okay.
I'm going to write down 2.
People should give a go. I mean, the first Nier game that recently got remastered, Nier Replicant, fantastic game. I mean, I could say Baldur's Gate 3, but who hasn't played Baldur's Gate 3? If you haven't played Baldur's Gate 3, I guess Baldur's Gate 3. I mean, I guess like if you haven't played the original Resident Evil 4, that's available on most platforms, and I think most people should play that. No, I'm sure you've played all of those anyway, but
all but one. Nier Replicant is
Nier Replicant. There you go. That's one game that is another fantastic game. We've got references from that in our lyrics as well.
I'm gonna have to play these games so I get these damn references. Okay. For me, Thomas Was Alone. Have you played it?
No, I've got it. I've not played it.
Ooh. It's pretty much my favorite game of all time. And it's got a soundtrack that I think should be given awards, but that's so that's one for me. Vampire Survivors.
Fantastic. Love that. They keep releasing DLC, so it gets rid of all my achievements on it. I'm like, I have them all, and then they release something else.
Oh, but I'm never complaining. Every time a new bit comes up, I'm like, oh my god, there's new stuff. Absolutely love it. And the last one is quite an old game, Dust: An Elysian Tale. Heard of it?
I've heard that one's quite good. Yeah, I had a copy of it, but I'm not actually. Oh, sick. Yeah, I think
the soundtrack's that good.
I've heard it's really good, that game. Yeah. Not played it.
Well, hopefully, when we see each other next, we're able to shout back to what these experiences were actually like for each other. Kate, as I said, you give me so much of your time. I really appreciate this. I've actually had to drop about 10 of those questions because we've been going for so long. Maybe next time.
I do already own Dust.
Oh!
Yeah. And I own Thomas Was Alone. Yeah.
It's in the list then. Yes. So thank you for doing this with me. And I look forward to speaking to you in the future.
Yeah. Chat to you soon.
Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see more content like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It is gratefully appreciated. You can find us over at gbhbl.com, our full website, where reviews, news, and so much more goes up daily. We're also on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, at GBHBL. Just search for GBHBL and you will find us out there. We also have merchandise on sale. You can access the shop via the website.